May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be always acceptable unto you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Please be seated. So today we are celebrating the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, who, among other things, in his life in imitation of Christ, was gifted with a love for nature, for the birds, for the animals. It is to St. Francis that we have, this from St. Francis that we have words like this: if you have men who will exclude any of God's creatures from the shelter of compassion and pity, you will have men who will deal likewise with their fellow men. None of the creatures are not excluded from God's shelter of compassion and pity. And today we invite you to bring with you those creatures of the non-human variety who make up your family, who you share compassion with. And those of us who have pets know that that compassion is not a one-way street. I remember when my elder daughter was a baby, she had colic. If you have ever had a baby with colic, you know that it is very difficult to comfort them. We spent many hours rocking, trying to soothe her cries. Sometimes the only thing that helped was to put her in our backpack and take her outside. And somehow, walking outside in the fresh air, listening to the bird songs, soothed her when nothing else would. Teachers have told me that our children today are suffering from a nature deficit, that children who have the opportunity to freely play outside, even if it looks like they're being idle, even if it looks like they're just sitting, collecting bugs maybe. That daughter, as she grew up, she spent many hours collecting bugs out in the yard. We lived out in the country, and there was a spring on the property surrounded by wild native roses. And that was her special place, was the rose spring. And she would go and just sit there. Maybe there is a place in your life like that. When I was in discernment for ministry, my spiritual director asked me, when was the first time you were aware of the Holy Spirit? And I remembered a time when I was on vacation with my parents up on the Metolius, staying in these little rundown cabins. They're more rundown now than they were then. And just sitting by the Metolius River and looking at a bush. And for a moment, I saw that bush so clearly. It was like each leaf and flower was picked out with gold. And I became aware of how precious it was. And for the moment, I felt embraced by the universe. Now you might think, because it is 2023 and maybe I have been infected by New Age spirituality. You might think this isn't really Christian. So I want to read you some quotations from theologians and invite you to think of when were these maybe written. The initial step for a soul to come to knowledge of God is contemplation of nature. When do you think that was written? You are right. Irenaeus of Lyons, who lived from 120 to 202, in his dissertation against heresies, because it is a heresy to think that the God who loves us and whom we worship and who saves us is different than the God who creates the butterflies, who loves the lilies of the field. I want creation to penetrate you with so much admiration that wherever you go, the least plant may bring you to the clear remembrance of the Creator. One blade of grass or one speck of dust is enough to occupy your entire mind in beholding the art with which it has been made. That was St. Basil the Great, who lived from 329 to 379. Here's another one. Now you might think this is political. The world has been created for everyone's use, but you few rich are trying to keep it for yourselves. For not merely the possession of the earth, but the very sky, the air, and the sea are claimed for the use of the rich few. The earth belongs to all, not just to the rich. That could have come from the encyclical that Pope Francis just issued, couldn't it? But that came from St. Ambrose of Milan. It was lived from 340 to 397. St. Teresa of Avila wrote in the early 16th century, if we learn to love the earth, we will find labyrinths, gardens, fountains, and precious jewels. A whole new world will open itself to us. We will discover what it means to be truly alive. Our Old Testament lesson today was the Ten Commandments, which is told us to not make idols for ourselves. What is an idol? An idol is a god made by human hands. Can the lilies be an idol? No, because they are not made by human hands. Can the trees be an idol? Again, no, they are not made by human hands. We can look at the trees, at the lilies, and see in them the creation of God without being guilty of idolatry. You may think that we don't have idols today because we no longer make marble statues of the goddess Athena. It's worse. We're being exhorted to turn ourselves into idols, to adorn ourselves with riches so that we appear worthy of worship. How many articles do you read along the lines of how to make your kitchen look expensive? I mean, if you've ever remodeled a kitchen, you know they are expensive without going to any effort, but that's not the point. Is the point of a kitchen not that it be functional, that it'll allow you to cook nutritious meals? But no, it's all image. And this pursuit of turning ourselves and our lives into objects of idolatry is killing the earth, because it requires more and more things, turns us into consumers instead of citizens, encourages us to look at each other in the most superficial of ways. We all are maybe of a generation who has not been as affected by this as our youth. But our youth are living in a world of social media where everyone is supposed to be perfect. Everyone is supposed to be an influencer. Everyone is supposed to try to turn themselves into an object of worship. And it's killing them. If you have young people, let them go into the woods. Let them have time doing nothing, sitting by a stream. Let them hear the words of Jesus. Consider the lilies of the field, how they toil not, and neither do they spin, and neither do they have expensive designer shoes, and neither do they have perfect airbrushed skin. They just are. And they are loved by God as they are. When we bring our pets to church with us, it's not really for their benefit as much as it is for us to be seen more in the fullness of our life, to have the fullness of our life invited into this sacred space. As a reminder that sacred space is not limited to this inside area, but that outside, the world as God creates it is sacred. And our job is just to remember that. Our job is to give thanks for it. Our job is to have humility that we are a creature along with other created things. St. Gregory of Nyssa, in his dissertation on love for the poor, wrote, "Use, do not misuse, so Paul teaches you. Find your rest in temperate relaxation. Do not indulge in a frenzy of pleasures. Don't make yourself a destroyer of absolutely all living things, whether they be four-footed and large or four-footed and small, birds, fish, exotic or common, a good bargain or expensive." And St. Augustine wrote, "Some people, in order to discover God, read books, but there is a great book, the very appearance of created things. Look above you, look below you, read it. God, whom you want to discover, never wrote that book with ink. Instead, he set before your eyes the things that he had made. Can you ask for a louder voice than that?"